Hi, everybody. Today's Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, and our friend Laith Marouf from Beirut is joining us. Welcome back, Laith.
Good to be with you, Nima.
Let's get started, Laith, with what Hezbollah said yesterday about the ceasefire. What are the main points of this statement?
Well, obviously, they congratulated the Palestinian people on the ceasefire and reasserted that this agreement on ceasefire shows that the resistance got the conditions that it requested for such a ceasefire, that it also proves that the only thing that the Zionists understand is the use of force and defense of people's rights by carrying arms, that negotiations with such an enemy never work. They, of course, congratulated all the members of the Axis of Resistance for their solidarity of the Palestinians and enacting that solidarity. And they send their condolences to the martyrs, the leadership that was martyred, including Haniya and Sinwar in Hamas. Also they noted that the genocide wouldn't have happened without the support of the American government and American state, that the ceasefire now coming when it's the same conditions that were put by Biden 13 months ago in December 2023 shows that the government of the United States could have stopped this genocide at any moment it wanted, but it chose not to.
As you mentioned, the the Qatari prime minister said that this is the same deal that they had in December 2023, which was suggested by Hamas. And how do you see the role of the Biden administration during more than a year of genocide in Gaza? They didn't do anything about it. And right now, Donald Trump has decided to go after this ceasefire. We don't know it's three phases, but we are in the first one, and we don't know if the second and the third gonna be implemented. But after all, it's a huge change in the decision of the in the policy of the United States in Gaza. How what's your understanding of the difference, and why did the Trump administration decide to go after such a plan, as we can call it ceasefire?
Well, look, the Biden administration and the whole Western imperial governance structures gave the Zionists every chance they can to break the will of the Palestinian people and conduct as much massacres as they want to achieve that. But it was very clear, I think, even by December 2023, when the Biden administration put forward this ceasefire agreement, was that the Palestinian people will never bow down, and you will have to eradicate them all, basically, to maintain the Zionist colony and or for Palestine to cease to exist. So, I think everything after that point was just playing in the extra time, let's say, of the match. And when it became so costly for the Zionist colony itself and for the whole empire behind it, the empire had to use and utilize every component of the imperial structures to maintain the Zionist colony over the last 16 months. October 7th, the Aqsa flood, from that point on, the Israeli military was defeated, and the Israeli military had to have the full support of all the military of NATO and the United States and the puppet vessels in the region to even fight the barefoot fighters in Gaza. And the maintenance of this war, you know, at any moment, if there was any one of the components of the imperial order that stopped supplying the Zionists with their needs, the colony would have collapsed. Includes something as stupid or small as the route of trade that the Emiratis, the Saudis, and the Jordanians created to make up for the loss of trade through the Red Sea because of Yemen's valiant blockade. If that wasn't there, the Israeli economy would have collapsed. The Israelis would have starved. If the Turks didn't nonstop deliver oil and gas and diapers for Israeli soldiers, the Israeli military would have had to stop its campaign. So this was an impossible situation to continue. And remember, the empire originally in 2003 had the idea of destroying all the components of the axis of resistance before attacking the Palestinians. It was supposed to be Lebanon first in 2006, and then Syria in 2012, and then go to Iran, and then the Palestinians are left alone. But 2006, Hezbollah won the war. 2011, Syria survived the invasion by the Wahhabite squads, and Iran was still standing. So the supply route or the military backing for the resistance in Palestine never ceased. So it was still a losing war for Israel right now, and the American empire had sacrificed much of its reputation, its 100 years of propaganda about human rights, international law, women's rights, children's rights, freedom of speech, freedom of media. All of that was sacrificed over the last 16 months. The losses of the empire as a whole, just to maintain this Zionist colony, I think, are unmatched before. We can say clearly today that the Gazan resistance, the resistance of the Palestinians with the support of the Axis of Resistance as a whole, have destroyed all the soft power of the empire that was invested for 100 years, let alone defeating the Zionists on the ground. And this is why Trump had to rush, because as we see, he has other plans. He has plans to take Mexico, Canada, Greenland, Panama. How is he going to do that with all the resources of the empire are directed to save this Zionist colony?
And when it comes to the situation in Lebanon, and it seems that the United States is building a new embassy in Lebanon. What is that? Many people are talking about the embassy. It's huge, it's so big. And what is all about, in your opinion? Is that a new, what's the purpose of this huge building, in your opinion, in Lebanon? I don't want to go after these people who are, these rumors who are that are about this embassy.
Yeah, so two things to know about this embassy. Number one is it's the second largest embassy in the world of any state. The first largest embassy in the world is the one in Baghdad in Iraq, the American embassy in Iraq. And we know the American embassy in Iraq really is the seat of governance of the whole, Iraq and the Arab monarchies in Arabia. Okay, this is where they're all governed from. And the embassy that they're building here in Beirut is supposed to basically govern the whole Eastern Mediterranean. It will now govern Syria and Lebanon, Jordan, and even the Zionist colony, Cyprus, all of that. It will project control over all this region. It's a few things to know about it is that I think it's 15,000 employees. I mean, what embassy needs that many employees? It's the snake pit his hornet's nest of CIA, FBI, and military advisors and what have you. Plus, it will be funding and housing every agent and collaborator in the region. So yeah, it's the real seat of governance for the East Mediterranean right now.
With what has happened in Lebanon, the new government, new president, and new prime minister, do you think that Hezbollah is adapting the new situation, or we're gonna have a conflict, a huge conflict within Lebanon?
I think Hezbollah already adapted to the situation. The appointment of both the president and the prime minister, Hezbollah didn't object to. So they have a plan clearly, and we're already seeing the results of the backdoor negotiations that they're having. We know now they're going to get at least two ministerial positions that are representative of Hezbollah. And it seems that the new prime minister, Salam, that used to be the Chief Justice in the International Court of Justice, is not doing exactly what the West expected him to do. And I think his experience in the ICJ and the hate and threats that he received during the time he was leading the court case for the genocide in Gaza have given him a bitter taste of what the West can do. And therefore, now that he's in a position of power, it seems like he's more conciliatory with the resistance and is not allowing his office to be fully manipulated by the Americans. It doesn't mean he's not going to give the Americans something, but clearly he is not willing to be the prime minister that causes a civil war. This is what the Americans want. The Americans want a president and a prime minister in Lebanon that kill Lebanese people on behalf of them. And they didn't get that, it seems like. So we'll see, like in the next week, actually, by the 27th is the deadline for the ceasefire and complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from South Lebanon. We'll see what the prime minister does then if the Israelis are not withdrawn, and what this new president, who was the head of the Lebanese military, what he would order the Lebanese military to do.
What would be your response to those people who are arguing that maybe the future of Hezbollah is to be integrated in as an army for Lebanon? Is that possible in the future, or Hezbollah still believes that they can operate separately from the government? How? Because you have the government in Lebanon, you have Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a political party participating in the political arena of Lebanon. On the other hand, when it comes to the military part, they're operating separately from Lebanon. How is that going to change in the near future?
I don't think so, because look, the conditions that created Hezbollah, which is that there is no sovereign government and or patriotic military that was defending Lebanese territory from occupation by Israel, by the United States and France in 1982. This is what led to the rise of Hezbollah. So as long as those conditions are still there, meaning Israeli military is occupying, American and French and others foreign governments are controlling the country, and the military and the government are not delivering on their duty to protect the territory and sovereignty of Lebanon, then there will be a Hezbollah. And even if Hezbollah is killed completely, something else will be born that will deliver on those. These are the natural conditions that created Hezbollah. So, similarly, when we talk about the Palestinian resistance, the conditions that created it is genocide, colonialism, imperialism, occupation, humiliation. Therefore, there will always be a Palestinian resisting as long as these awful conditions are there. So, no, Hezbollah is not going to disarm, especially even more so today when we have these hordes of Wahhabi death squads lurking on the border from Syria, while the Israelis are in the south of Lebanon still occupying. I think only a lunatic in Lebanon will lay down their guns today. Regular Shia and Christians today in Lebanon are arming to their teeth themselves without anybody's help. Every Shia in the Beqa Valley and the Qalamun mountains is buying everything they can buy, from their own personal money to prepare to defend themselves if those Wahhabi hordes are made to cross or if the Israelis return to attacking Lebanon.
The situation in Syria is the way that the United States is so calm and sure about that there is no resistance in the future growing in Syria, or we can say that the situation is not that stable that could bring some sort of calmness to the attitude of Israel or the United States in the region.
Well, there's already armed resistance on the ground against the Wahhabi government that's controlling Damascus today. Most prominently in the coast area, and we saw many of the leaders of various Wahhabi death squads getting killed and or their offices attacked. And this is why actually, I think 48 hours ago, the Turkish military invaded the coast of Syria and is coming in because the HTS, all these death squads combined after the long war in Syria, they only had around 60,000 fighters left. You can't control Syria with 60,000 fighters. That's not even enough for a police force in Syria. So the Turks are moving in and trying to suppress the armed rebellion in the coast, in Latakia and Tartus and the mountains around the coast. And at the same time, the videos that are coming out on a daily basis from Syria, from Damascus, from Aleppo, from Hamas, like the major quote-unquote Sunni cities, are horrendous. I mean, yesterday I was watching a video of a group of youth. They're in a coffee shop and they're playing music on music instruments. They're, just jamming. And these HTS thugs came in and beat them up and beat up the women, the young women that were singing in the group. Every other day we see a different famous Syrian actor or singer being abused. And the new HTS government just banned music in public spaces and is, disbanding the Ministry of Art. And, I don't know if I said this before on your show, but Syria is the most important cultural hub in the Arabic world. Yes, Egypt produces a lot more, but most people consume actually Syrian music and Syrian TV and drama and film more than they do Egyptian, even in the rest of the Arabic world. And it's the only competitor to Turkish dubbed soap operas and movies that are invading the Arabic world. So it's beyond that. This is like, you have all these artist scenes in Syria that are going to be decimated and lose their freedoms and jobs and so forth. This is also being done to increase the capture of Arabic media market by Turkish arts and media scene. So this is, not only about the craziness of Wahhabi cult It's also about the Turkish financial and cultural control of the region.
We don't have any sort of poll coming out of Syria to understand what is the public opinion in Syria. But there were many people who were totally against Assad and his government. How do they feel right now? How do they feel with the new government, with HTS in power, Israel in the south, Turkey in the north, and the situation with Kurds? How are they really feeling that this situation is getting better for them and for Syria?
I think anybody that, which, the majority of the opposition to President Assad and or the Ba'ath Party government before was about, corruption and stuff like this. Okay, and no, majority of people were not sectarian in their outlook in Syria. And so anyone that had an illusion that things could get better or corruption will end and or the economy will get better or that somehow if the Ba'ath government and President Assad are removed right now are reassessing their analysis. And clearly the biggest victims of the HTS government right now are Sunni Muslims, okay, who in Syria, the majority of them are from the Sufi sect, the mystics. They, don't belong to the same schools as in religious outlook as the Wahhabis, and they're getting their mosques raided and their preachers lynched, and this is not going to work for them. And anyone that was secular, let alone the Christian, Alawi, Shia, Druze populations, they're all now in feeling the heat and are scared of what's happening. There's already like many organizations that popped up inside Syria that are documenting the violations of the HTS, and then outside Syria, and already new parties are being formed. And I think if there is a democracy and or a real election in Syria, which I don't think will happen, honestly, the Americans will never let it happen. These parties that represent secular government and freedoms and equality for the citizens are the ones that are going to win. And also, I think, parties that are going to be independent and sovereigntist are also the ones that are going to be winning control if there's democracy. But as we see, Syria is not going to be allowed to have an election for the next 4 years, if not more. And the Western powers, the empire, is trying to conduct a demographic change campaign in Syria to assure that whatever party they put forward to govern the country would win by the time they do have an election in 4 or 5 years from now.
The ceasefire in Gaza and the situation in Syria, Assad is gone. It seems that Donald Trump wants to get back to Abraham Accord with the Arab states. If he goes in that direction, considering Assad is gone and the situation in Lebanon, the new government in Lebanon, do you think the next target would be Lebanon, or they're gonna manage the situation with Arab states, or Iran would be the next target?
Yeah, I mean, we saw him today in his press conference, Trump, while he's signing all these decrees, being asked about Saudi returning to the Abraham Accords. And actually, the question started with about his which country he's going to visit first as his first foreign trip as the president. And the last time it was Saudi Arabia, and it was because they paid me $450 billion And I'm willing to not go to the UK as the first option and go to the Saudis if they pay this time 500 billion because of inflation. So he's already shaking them down publicly, milking them like a cow publicly. This is what's good about Trump. He's not two-faced. He's going to humiliate these house slaves that have been the milking cow of American empire for, since the 1940s. All the oil of these Gulf countries have really been the backbone of Western economies. Without the oil of these Gulf countries, the American and Western economies would have collapsed decades ago. So, yeah, he's going to shake them down. And he said that maybe they will be signing on to the Abraham Accord soon. Maybe. I don't think they will be signing on the Abraham Accords. Not because they don't want to, as Master tells them. It's because even Master knows that if the Saudis sign on to the Abraham Accord right now, before the defeat, the total defeat of the Palestinians and the axis of resistance, they will lose their ability to manipulate Islam and the emotions of Muslims completely. They almost lost control of the emotions of Muslims during this 15 months of genocide in Gaza, where the 10 decades of investment by the Saudi regime to export Wahhabism and create hate against Shia people in the rest of the Muslim populations, which were never hating of Shia, where it was going to collapse. The Saudis were rushing to do these, prostitution festivals in the middle of Riyadh, basically bringing every prostitute on the planet to have those festivals, and ridding themselves of any of that religiosity baggage that the West, let's say, put on them as part of the propaganda, and suddenly they had to, in the middle of this Holocaust in Gaza, they had to reinvest in all the propaganda against Shia while they are having festivals in Riyadh as the Holocaust is happening. So it was really problematic for them. How are they going to play this two-sided game? And so for them to accept the Abraham Accords as the where Mecca and Medina is, the country where Mecca and Medina is, while there's a genocide, and while also there's still another pole within the Muslim world that is led by Iran that projects, liberation of the oppressed and speaks in those terms and acts on it. I think Saudi Arabia would see revolts within their country if they go that path.
We've learned today that Yemen scales back Red Sea operations, vowing full stop after all phases of Gaza ceasefire implement. Here comes the question: can the United States force the Arab state into Abraham Accord, and maybe not considering that sentence that the Arab states wanted to put in the accords, in the agreement, which considers a Palestinian state living in that region? Is that possible?
Well, first off, about Yemen, obviously they said they're going to stop firing missiles on the Zionist colony, but they're going to continue to attack shipping that's going to Israel until the ceasefire is completely implemented. So, this is, I think, a much more radical position than any other member of the Axis of Resistance even took. And we're proud of Yemen to stay there, to police basically the implementation of the ceasefire. there is no sovereignty in the Arabic world. Most of the Arabic states now are controlled by the Americans directly. The only sovereigns are Ansarullah in Sana'a and partially maybe Algeria, but everybody else is not anymore. Out of the 22 Arabic states, the rest are all controlled by the West. So, if the masters in the White House calculate that any of these vessels can survive after signing to the Abraham Accord, they make them do it. And we saw that happening with the Emirates and Bahrain, where 9 out of 10 people that live in those countries are not citizens, meaning they don't even exist as a country anymore, right? So, there will be no revolt of the Indians in the Emirates, for instance, right, against the Abraham Accords, or those couple of 100,000 Bahrainis that are outnumbered by Saudi troops and Indian foreign workers and American troops, even if they revolt, which they have been revolting in Bahrain since 2012, their revolt will not mean anything because for every Bahraini there's 10 who are non-Bahrainis that are occupying their country. But because they still fear that if Saudi signed on to the Abraham Accord, that there will be some revolt inside the country. This is the only reason that Master in the White House is not making Saudi Arabia sign on to the Abraham Accord currently.
The main question, Laith, right now, with the situation that we all know about Gaza and the suffering that people had for more than a year, the West Bank doesn't seem to be that much better than what's going on in Gaza. What is the main goal of Palestinian Authority in the West Bank? Are they gonna cooperate with Israelis? Do they have any sort of concern for the people of the West Bank, Palestinians?
Yeah, I mean, Free Palestine TV are journalists all around the West Bank. Over the last 2 days, they've been covering all the release of the prisoners from Israeli dungeons, and also, and this is important, they were covering the activities of the Palestinian Authority, including creating these barricades to blockade Palestinian cities. The Palestinian Authority is doing it itself to stop the Palestinians from celebrating the release of the prisoners and to help the Zionists attack resistance anywhere. So also yesterday, the Israelis, declared a curfew on all of the West Bank and shut down all entrances to all Palestinian cities and villages. They're, making all the Palestinians into hostages in the West Bank. And, yesterday, or the night before, there was the release of the 90 somewhat Palestinian prisoners, mainly women and underage children. Well, by the morning, the Israelis had arrested 60 somewhat people in Tul Kerim. They just surrounded the town and then asked all the men out in the street and then arrested 60 men just like for the hell of it. Also, they just declared, the Israelis, a new operation in the West Bank called Iron Wall, and they're deploying two battalions to conduct this operation. They're invading Jenin city and Jenin refugee camp. And, last week it was the Palestinian Authority that occupied Jenin and Jenin camp and invaded them and killed civilians and used snipers and used RPGs. The security forces of the Palestinian Authority used RPGs to shoot on civilian homes inside Jenin refugee camp. So clearly, the security forces of Mahmoud Abbas are collaborationist force. They're like the Vichy regime, and these are the capos that collaborate with the Nazis. And the Palestinians, I saw a few videos of different Palestinians inside the West Bank being asked these questions yesterday. They all said that it's time right now to take out Mahmoud Abbas. I think there's going to be a huge revolt in the West Bank against the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian security forces with them. And it's going to be the end of them. This was coming for 15 years. People should have done this long time ago. But I mean, here we are. This is what's going to happen. And the Zionists are going to attack the West Bank. Trump just lifted the sanctions on Israeli colonists that were sanctioned by Biden for their terrorization of Palestinian villagers and attacks on civilians in Palestinian villages and towns. Well, the minute Trump lifted those sanctions, we saw them go on a rampage last night, a huge rampage, and even to the point where Israeli soldiers trying to shoot on Palestinians. There were so many settlers around that they killed a settler by accident, the Israeli soldiers, because these settlers were putting, clothes to make them look like Arabs when they're invading Palestinian villages.
What is the process of removing Abbas from power? Is that some sort of election? Is that some sort of, I don't know, who has decided that Abbas is the head of Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and what would be the main process to remove him from power?
The last election was in 2006 when Hamas won, or was it 2000? Yeah, anyways, point is, like, at least 15 years ago. And there was supposed to be an election a few years ago that the Palestinian factions pushed for, if our viewers remember, and it was during the attack on Jerusalem by the Zionists 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Time is passing so fast, so many wars that are now getting jammed together for us in our head. Mahmoud Abbas suspended those elections when it was clear that he was going to lose. This is not an elected representative. He doesn't represent the Palestinians. A fraction of the Palestinians support Mahmoud Abbas. If there's an election today, he would be gone. It would be Hamas that wins everything, with Islamic Jihad and the PFLP and any other group that carried arms to defend their people. So I don't expect them to ever allow another election to happen in Palestine, just like they're not allowing it to happen in Syria. But I think the way forward for the Palestinian people, and more groups are now calling for this, is to go back to the original formula, which was that the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, is the sole representative of the Palestinian people anywhere. It's not the Palestinian Authority that only represents the West Bank. The vast majority of Palestinians live outside Palestine, in diaspora, in refugee camps. There's 14 million Palestinians. Only 5 million of them are inside the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem. The rest are around the world. And therefore, there has to be a government in exile that is not occupied and under the threat of being killed, or could be manipulated with money and passes over from checkpoints and stuff like that. That is the best way to go back. And all the Palestinian factions and parties should be represented in this new Palestinian Liberation Organization. And if Fatah, which is led now by this traitor Mahmoud Abbas, wants to join this new PLO, then yeah, they can join, but it will be a seat that is where they don't have a veto, as they have now. Mahmoud Abbas now not only controls the Palestinian Authority and the Fatah party. He also controls the PLO and is not allowing Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other parties to be represented inside the PLO, and has a veto on what the PLO does. So there's no democracy even in the old PLO. We need to revive it and form a government in exile to be able to defend our people.
Last week, Anthony Blinken said that Hamas recruited more forces than they've lost during the conflict in Gaza. We know that the the loss of Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar, these are huge for Hamas and for the future of Hamas. But how is that? How is the situation right now with the leadership of Hamas and the forces? Is that the case, as Anthony Blinken was pointing out?
Yeah, so the leadership of Hamas, since its foundation in 1987 till today, every leader has been killed. From their founder, Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, to, as we said, Hania and Sinwar. And so this is, we're talking about tens of leaders of the value and charisma and strategic knowledge and military knowledge of Sinwar and Hania. And so from this history, we can clearly see that Hamas will not be defeated in such ways. Hamas has prepared itself, every leader in Hamas has prepared themselves to be martyred, and the organization is ready to replace him immediately with people that have the same knowledge and beliefs and determination. So yes, Hamas has not been affected. It's affected spiritually, maybe emotionally for a moment there. Those martyrdom were heavy on all the Palestinians, not only members of Hamas. But the glory even of seeing the martyrdom of Sinwar broadcasted and his last moments fighting the drone that before they fired a tank shell on him, actually probably strengthened the will of anyone that was going to fill the shoes of Sinwar. And as we're speaking right now, all these Palestinians are going back to their homes and are finding the skeletal remains or the decomposed remains of their family members. Uh, you know, if Hamas had any problem recruiting before this genocide, it has now no problem. And if Hamas had, equal number of recruits before the ceasefire as it was before the October 7th, I think today with the ceasefire, Hamas is going to have even more people coming to it, saying, "I want to be a fighter with you," and because now things are even sinking in. People were going to join Hamas or Islamic Jihad or other armed groups in Gaza during this Holocaust because of the anger and wanting to get revenge to, let's say, their family members being killed. Well, today, it's not going to be just a reactionary emotion that drives people to go join Hamas or other Palestinian militaristic group. It's actually rational thinking. After you go back, you see your home, the destruction of it, that if you can find your home, if you can even recognize the neighborhood, if you can find the road that leads to your place, the geography has been changed so much that rationally, anyone that sits there and looks for their home will be like, okay, the only path forward is for me to carry arms and defend myself and people and fight for this. So yes, Hamas has more recruits. Islamic Jihad has more recruits. PFLP has more recruits. Anyone and everyone that says, I am going to carry arms against Palestine will have recruits today. Against the Israelis in Palestine, they'll have recruits today.
Before wrapping up, Laith, this session, please let us know how we can help you and your work?
Yes, so you can go to our website, freepalestine.video, and donate. Do a monthly subscription. It'll be great. We're trying to stabilize our funding. We are, as I said, spread out across the West Bank. We've been interviewing over the last few days every prisoner that was released, and we're going to bring you the stories as they happen. And of course, over the next few days, there'll be so many others released. Nobody else is doing this work in English specifically. You may find the videos of the moments of people coming out of the bus and so on, but if you want to hear the voices of these Palestinian prisoners, their stories, what happened to them, what they suffered, come to freepalestine.video, follow us on all our social media, donate. And we're doing all the coverage from Lebanon. We're continuing to do that coverage, and especially right now with the ceasefire coming to an end, we will be going to all the liberated villages in the south of Lebanon to give you a clearer view of what's happening. Again, freepalestine.video is the website. Donate, please. Follow us on all the social media.
Thank you so much, Laith. Great pleasure as always.
Talk to you soon, Nima.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.